We're gonna go over cardio for combat training, and we're gonna start right now. All right, so when we're looking at cardio and when we're looking at endurance-based training and what you need for sports that are gonna be combat focused, let's just first identify what those sports are gonna be. A sport like wrestling, boxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, judo, anything along those lines, okay? That's where we're talking about. Those are the sporting realms that we're looking at. Then when we start to look at different factors, I like to break those sports down into 3 different types of endurance. So if we're looking at individuals who just gas and die right off the bat, okay, they're gonna have a specific type of endurance that they can use that they can actually help improve their performance almost immediately. If we have somebody who, let's say we have a wrestler, or even if we're an amateur boxer and we have a tournament, okay? If we have somebody who has 2 to 3 matches in a day or 2 to 3 bouts in a day, but they start to gas on the second or third bout or second or third match, that's gonna be another realm that we can really focus on to try and improve their overall endurance. And then that third one would be if we have someone in MMA or wrestling and they have a really hard scramble, or if we're in boxing and they have crazy flurries and they really struggle to recover from those scrambles or those flurries, that's gonna be another realm of endurance that we have to focus on. So we like to break down, 1, those sports, okay? So combat sports, what are we looking at? Muay Thai, judo, wrestling, all those different types of sports. And then 2, the different types that we're looking at is gonna be based off of whether or not they gas after a lot of matches, so 2 to 3 matches, or finally, if they gas after they do a scramble or a flurry. All right, so if we're looking at a wrestler, okay, let's say we have a heavyweight wrestler and he struggles, he gets out on the mat, and after a minute and a half, he's gassed, he's sucking wind, okay? Think about that type of wrestler. Now, also, think about a boxer. They've got a lot of anxiety before that competition. They get into that first round, and about a minute and a half, 2 minutes in, they feel like their arms weigh a ton, okay? Typically what that shows us is that these individuals, 1, they could prepare a little bit better mentally, but 2, they lack mitochondrial volume. They aren't really trained well with cardio at all. And some individuals, ironically, some individuals in combat sports genetically are just more gifted to have a large amount of mitochondrial volume. Some others tend to not be. Some other fighters or wrestlers are extremely explosive, but they still have to work on that mitochondrial volume. So if we have an individual that gasses almost immediately, the first recommendation is that they should be doing 45 to 60 minutes of steady state cardio, okay? So LSD work, nice and easy. Their heart rate should be about 150 beats per minute, and they should be able to hold that for 30 to 45 minutes. If they're getting on an assault bike, they should be able to hold 55 to 60 RPMs for about 45 to 60 minutes. If they're getting on the rower, they should be able to bust out 5,000 meters relatively easy, and again, at that 150 to 160 beats per minute, but be able to sustain that for a long period of time. If you have that individual who gasses immediately, you should be doing this about 3 days a week. And then I would also add in, get into a sauna 4 days a week for 30 minutes at 170 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so the main goal here is that when we see somebody who gets out and they have no endurance base, the fastest way to help them build that up is to increase mitochondrial volume. That's gonna be long, steady state cardio, and that's gonna drastically improve their overall foundation so that then we can build other aspects to help them improve in their combat fighting. Now, let's get into that second key factor. Remember, we covered that umbrella of combat sports. That second area now is if somebody has, let's say they're a collegiate wrestler or a high school wrestler, and they've got 4 or 5 matches in one day, okay? And you notice that after the second or third match, these dudes are totally shot. They're completely shot. They have no gas left in the tank. Typically, what we're gonna see here is that they struggle with that mitochondrial respiration, and they struggle with the ability to recover in between those matches, and that's where we're gonna see an impact from high intensity interval training. Now, one of the key concepts here is that high intensity interval training can really take a toll on the individual, so you've gotta play the game very lightly. If we're inside of a collegiate wrestling season, you don't wanna beat these guys up too much or these women up too much with high intensity interval work. But an example might be you set a timer for 20 minutes, and for 20 minutes on the assault bike, you have to hold 65 to 70 RPMs. That's pretty challenging. Now, to add in a little bit more of an interval-based work, you might go 70 RPMs for a minute and a half or a minute, and then you might go 30 seconds to 60 seconds at 40 RPMs. And you do that for a 20-minute time frame. You could also get outside and run hill sprints for 20 straight minutes. And then over the time frame of 6 to 8 weeks, see if you can get more hill sprints done in that 20-minute period. You could use things like kettlebell swings. You could use things like the prowler, the sled. You could do sled work. You could do ski erg. You could do rower tests, but use a 20-minute time frame and then use intervals to trigger a big spike in the heart rate and then active rest and then another big spike in that heart rate, but doing that over about a 20-minute time frame. Again, try to pay attention to how that wrestler, how that fighter adapts over the next 6 to 8 weeks, and you're gonna see they can handle 3, 4, 5 bouts very, very easily. Now, remember back to that breakdown in the beginning, we talked about individuals that if they have a flurry or a scramble, they can't recover inside of that match or inside of that fight. They struggle a ton to get that heart rate back down and then get back into the zone of trying to set up whatever they're trying to do on offense, okay? If you have that individual, typically that's a really, really big sign of a struggle regarding mitochondrial respiration. High intensity interval training does help with mitochondrial respiration, but another key aspect here is that if we look at a big flurry, the heart rate is gonna go off the charts. Okay, so we might get to 170, 175 beats per minute inside of that match, and it'll plummet back down after that flurry stops. But then that individual struggles to bring that heart rate down and recover inside of that match. So the big thing that we have to focus on is going to be sprint interval training. This could be using something like Tabatas. And Tabatas you could sort of use more in high intensity interval training, which is gonna be 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. But you can also do versions of that inside of sprint interval based training. A good version would be 10 seconds as hard as you can go on the assault bike, then 50 seconds rest. 10 seconds as hard as you can go, 50 seconds rest. That's an example of sprint interval based training on the assault bike. Another example might be getting on a non-motorized treadmill, running as hard as you can for 10 to 15 seconds and then resting 45 seconds. Try to get your heart rate to go through the roof and then focus on bringing that down. And when you're a coach or you're dealing with that athlete or you are an athlete yourself, try to get those techniques that you use to get the heart rate to come up, but instill those techniques of how to breathe properly, how to focus on lowering your heart rate, how to calm your anxiety so that you can get that heart rate back down. So then when you're inside of a match or a fight, you can actually use those skills that you've trained. But again, it goes back to doing something extremely hard for 10 to 15 seconds. You can use the sprinting model. You can use an assault bike. You can do the rower for 15 seconds as hard as possible. You could do a 10-second sprint as hard as possible and then rest for a minute. Let's say you get on a track. That's a good example of where you could actually practice that. But sprint interval training is going to be based around 10 to 12, maybe 15 overall reps. Okay, and then you're gonna be done with that workout. It's gonna help you deal with those scrambles a little bit more effectively, and that in turn is gonna help you recover from match to match as well. Now, all of this stuff has to be built on the foundation of that mitochondrial volume, so you still have to be doing 2 to 3 days of long, steady state work. So if you're someone who struggles with not having a training partner, or maybe you feel like you need a coach to help you with your overall programming, we've got exactly what you need. You can head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, where you can get 7 free days of training inside of our app, Peak Strength. When you download the app for those 7 free days of training, you can fill out that you're a combat athlete and you want to be training for wrestling or boxing, anything like that, and you will get a program that when you go to the gym, you have a program built specifically to your needs and even the equipment that you have available inside of your gym and that peak date. Again, go to peakstrength.app, click on the link down below, because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.